Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
So Joel, Jen has us on another one of these topics that are a little bit outside of where we normally go, which is fine. I mean, I'm happy with that. But it's a little bit, I mean, the basic topic she came up with today is the universe and vibration. Are you in alignment with the vibration of the universe? And all I could think of as I was, preparing for, okay, how are we going to start this conversation? Because we always need some way to start it, is something that I can't talk about. We were just talking about something that I can't talk about. But I'm thinking, if we talked about that, that would actually get us into that conversation, but we can't go there. So we have to figure out a way to get into this conversation without getting ourselves into trouble, because we'll get in trouble with the other one.
Yeah, that one, I mean, even I see that. So,
Yeah.
And usually I don't care, but that was a little much for us. So
that would be way over the top. So we've got to figure out a way that we can talk about this topic of vibration and being in alignment with it. And it's not all that far outside of what.
No, I mean, law of attraction, as we talk about almost every week, is vibrational. There's a vibrational connection. What you want, you tuned into, and the matching vibrations attracts it. That's 101. That's the Bob Proctor basic great stuff. It's all vibrational. It goes way back to Earl Nightingale talked about that. It's just so we have that energy vibration where learning to deal with it. How do you tune into the right energy vibration is close to what I think we're sort of getting at. That's
right. Exactly. Yeah. And it's also recognizing that it exists, that there is a vibration that's real. This isn't theoretical.
Yes.
This isn't something that, it's just some sort of an airy fairy thing. This is real. This is real vibration.
Yeah. It's real vibration, energy that we all emit various energy and vibration. When you're in the room with somebody, one of the reasons that I prefer in-person sessions to online sessions or virtual sessions is you don't get as much energy exchange with me virtually as you do in the room. And the energy exchange is where my greatest strength is. I feel that. So when somebody walks in the room, almost all the time they say, wow, I feel so much better than when I walked in. Mm-hmm. And I'm explaining to them that, as we were talking, I naturally vibrate higher. I do this for a living, but I try to charge that full blast energy of my stuff to them, and that raises the room. It works in reverse. I've shared this a few times. So every now and then I end up with a client that is the most boring person on the planet. And, and I'm sitting there going, oh, and most of my sessions feel like that 1 hour flies by. I mean, it's shockingly how fast it goes.
Right.
But there's clients that I occasionally have, and these are nice people, but the clock goes backwards, I think. I think one time I'm pretty sure this happened. I took a glimpse at the clock real fast, thinking 30 minutes had gone by and 10 minutes had gone by. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I looked again, and then only 9 minutes had gone by. So something, I think it went backward. But so the energy that you bring to when you're looking to use the law of attraction, basically tuning into learning to understand everything vibrationally. So when we operate, I have a very dear friend who lost his father last night. And
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and I've known these people for years, and that they're like family. So we knew he was ill, but it's always shocking when the end comes. So I found out first thing this morning that he had passed, and so obviously I messaged all the family members, offering my condolences. But then I realized I'm in this sort of that vibrational energy matching grief, and that. So while that's certainly what you should be doing, that's a normal progression. But before I leave my house, I have to figure out a way to lift that energy vibration within me, because if I'm going out with that energy, I want to be attracting similar. And I'm going to use the word negative here, but grief isn't negative. It's just, but you get my point. It's a lower vibration. And I didn't want to leave on a Monday morning with a full day with a lower vibration. So obviously the first thing that I do, and every Monday morning, is go to the gym. So before I even do that, I had to sit down and do some meditations, had to do some focus, and I got my energy up a little bit. And of course, once I got it up a little bit, I go to the gym and make it really good. But
Mhm.
that period in between, it was, you know, I was feeling like I cannot put this out there because I know what I'm going to attract. So
Mm.
understanding how you feel, we talk about the emotional guidance scale a lot that Abraham Hicks uses, but knowing how you feel will indicate where you're vibrating at, and that's what's really important to know how to adjust. So when we talk about law of attraction, it's all vibrational. It's all vibrational, and a lot of people just think, well, that's woo woo. But you can be in a room with people that are invigorating. They make you feel better. You're in a better mood. Or you can be in a room with people that are just very negative. And so that proves that connect, the energy exchange is there. So when you're in tune with the what you're after, being in tune with financial abundance is an understanding. You can't tune into financial abundance with a financial lack vibration.
By the way, there are a couple of other things I want to add to what you're saying because I love what you're saying. Um, One thing that I wanted to add is if you're in a negative vibrational space and you're in the room with somebody else who's in the same negative vibrational space, you feel closer to them
Yes.
just
Yes.
because of the similarity of the vibration.
Well, misery loves company is a
Yeah.
saying that sort of supports that. And you, on the opposite side of that, you get two high vibrational people in a room, they'll find each other,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the convergence of the vibrations in either direction amplify them. Even though you two positive people will amplify their energy, and two negative people will amplify their energy downward. So it's you can almost see it when you walk into a room. You can see the people. You can almost a lot of it is so sub perceptual that you can't visually see it a lot of times. Sometimes the facial expressions give it away or whatever. But there's a lot of body language. There's a lot of ways somebody's holding themselves, the eye contact they're making. Those are all things that can sort of suggest, where are we at in this vibration connection.
Hmm.
So it's really important to identify that. So whatever you want, whatever you're trying to attract with a law of attraction, the key fundamental thing is first learning the vibration of what you're trying to attract.
And what goes along with that, I believe, help us to understand why it is that we sometimes experience what you described, that
Yes.
experience where you're in the same room with somebody and there's just no resonance at all. And it's because the vibrations are so different.
Yes.
If the vibrations are that big of a difference, it's really hard to put yourself in that other person's shoes and to feel what they're feeling.
Yes. I was speaking with a reporter last week about they were they were talking about the dating apps
Mm.
and just various things. They were talking to several therapists and life coaches that work with various people and were asking opinions of that. And I said, the I'm not pro or against. I'm just simply saying factually the dating apps totally missed the boat because there's one metric that really applies in it is that picture. The
Yes.
the picture is all that matters in a dating app. You're
Mm.
you're you're not getting a person's energy or vibration, which is the biggest part of attraction. So there's multiple relationships, potential relationships that are bypassed because there's no way to translate that through a picture.
Yeah, I've
And
often thought that if you wanted to do a video, I mean, not a video, yeah, well, ultimately that's where I was going. If you wanted to do a dating app that would work, it had to be video based. You had to make video recordings so that people could actually see that person
yes,
behaving, doing,
yes.
acting.
Yeah, and that's really important because the one of my clients is older gentleman. He's been divorced for a while. I think he's 60. He's he self describes himself as very plain looking. He's his description. I'm short and bald, and
Mm,
but he also has a hilarious sense of humor. He has
mm,
plenty of money. He goes on very fun trips. He does a great
mhm.
thing. He's on the dating app and can't find anybody. They're just it
Yeah.
just he said, look, I'm not built for this product, that doesn't match me. So we were talking about places where he loves to bike, for example. So there's a
Mhm,
biking club here in Richmond that
mhm,
he joined, and sure enough, there's several other people there of all different ages. But over the weeks, he was talking to this lady. At first, there was no spark or anything there, but he made her laugh a lot.
Mhm.
He's a very generous man. He bought her lunch a couple times with no intention, but just, and so she literally asked him out.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah. She said, "You got the best energy." And he said, "You're right the entire time. The old way of connecting is how you really connect.
Yes.
Not the new way, which is built solely on appearance." And there's some incredibly beautiful women and very handsome men out there, but the looks fade, the looks go away. But that energy is a lifetime. Your energy can be your entire life. So when you're just using one metric, that's why those things are very seldom effective. They do work sometimes. I'm not saying they don't, but for the most part, they don't really work for deep relationships.
I was thinking about something that happened in my life about 30 years ago. I'm in a Facebook group for single men, and one of the things they talk about, not surprisingly, is what's it take to find the woman of your dreams, that kind of thing. And there are certain themes that run in the group that really rub me the wrong way, and I won't even get into what they are. But the point is, I decided I was going to try to, in a sense, challenge what those ideas were by telling the story from my own experience 30 years ago. And it actually wasn't so much my story; it was my friend's story. I had a friend for about 3 years. His name was Ron, and Ron was he was a relatively unremarkable person. Now, at this time, I was in my early 30s. He was in his late 20s. He's full-blooded Italian, a fairly good-looking guy, not what I would call a hunk. I doubt that he would fit into anybody's category of being a hunk. He certainly wasn't particularly athletic or anything like that, but a fairly good-looking guy. But he had an amazing ability, absolutely amazing ability, and I experienced it with him over and over again. Anytime we went out anywhere, we could go to a club, we could go to a restaurant, we could go to a park, we could go to a party, to a dance. It made absolutely no difference. It was always the same experience. We would go into whatever it was to that place, and within minutes of us just going in and sitting down, two or three women would come over out of the blue and hand him pieces of paper folded up.
Yeah.
And he would show them to me, and the folded up pieces of paper had their names and phone numbers on them. Now, he didn't interact with any of them. He would sometimes do eye contact with some of them, but a lot of them would come over with no eye contact at all. He didn't do anything. He didn't do any flirting. He didn't do anything at all. They would just come over and hand him phone numbers and names.
Right.
And I was amazed, like, how on earth do you do that? And he couldn't even really tell me. I mean, he tried to explain it, but he didn't really know either. He just knew that was his normal experience. And that's the way it works in life. That's the way relationships work, right? Well, there was one thing that I realized later on was very consistent about him. He had a vibration that was palpable.
Yeah.
I mean, you felt it. Male, female, I didn't care. I mean, I wasn't attracted to him, but boy, oh boy, did I feel it. Now, everybody has a vibration. Every human being I've ever met has a vibration.
Yes.
And most of them are quite different from each other. They're all quite unique. This guy's was of a kind unlike any I had ever experienced before. And I'm certain that vibration is the reason why these women were coming over. Women who knew nothing about him. They knew nothing about this guy.
You nailed it, because you said he didn't do anything. He didn't intentionally do anything, but he had a belief in himself. He believed that
Yes.
existed.
Oh, yeah.
And so when he walked in, he broadcast that to the room, the
That's
entire
right.
room. And when you've heard me make the statement before, I want to influence the energy in the room. When I walk into a room, my goal is to influence the energy in the room.
Right.
I walk in with that tangible goal. If I influence the energy, I then control the room, and that's how that works. And he does that. He didn't have a name for it. He
Nope.
believed it. He tried to explain it, but he instinctively knew it, but he didn't know he was literally broadcasting the frequency of all of that.
That's right.
And people walk in and they turn. It's just that he didn't announce himself. He didn't do anything. It wasn't he was, I get it. He wasn't a super great looking guy, but a good guy, good looking guy. And by the way, to our younger viewers, the term hunk was used way back in the 1980s. Walt doesn't understand hot or whatever you guys use now, but just letting you know, I'm sort of deciphering 1980s language for you. So, but within that, you see you can see that process. And then that translates. That's why dating apps don't work. That's why those things don't
Right.
work as well, because there is. But you can also learn. And this guy, you said his name was Ron.
Ron, yeah.
Yeah, Ron seemed to be pretty good at it. But you can develop that, whether Ron worked of it or just happened naturally. You can develop that by feeling a certain way, projecting your energy. It's a lot of thought, but you can attract people or influence the room when you practice that and you exchange that energy. You're trying to you try to bring that in.
And he had, you described it fairly well. He had a tremendously high level of self-confidence,
Yes,
tremendously high level,
yes,
to the
yeah,
point where it wasn't even open to question.
yeah,
And he literally walked into the room, not arrogantly, there was nothing arrogant about it, no bragging or whatever, but he literally believed he was the most attractive man in the room.
absolutely. And that translates, and that applies to all areas of life. We're talking about a lot of attraction with people and stuff, but that applies to whether you're applying for a job or whether you're interviewing somebody, a sales technique. There's you know I've walked in to give a talk to a group and been offered jobs probably 20 times. Well, you want to run our place? You want to come in as whatever? And I'm like, no, but it's just there's an energy to that.
Yeah.
There's an energy that like, wow, you really understand all of this. We would love for you to. I do a lot of consulting with that concept of, when I do big company consultings, people with sales and stuff, I focus on those things. What you're, number one, knowing the currency of the other person. And then once you know the currency of learning to tune into the frequency of that currency, and you're going to sell all the time.
That's right. Yeah. So there are a couple things more that I want to drill down on here that I think are important. One of them is going to be a little bit controversial for some people, so just kind of throwing out a little bit of a warning here. And maybe I'll just go there first to get that out of the way. Whenever I think of the word vibration, I think about the fact that literally everything in the universe vibrates. In fact, we haven't found anything that doesn't vibrate. That's probably the easiest way to say it. And the controversial part is I'm going to suggest that everything that vibrates is alive. And that's not going to fit everybody's belief system. And no, that's fine. I understand that. I think that everything that vibrates is alive, which means I think everything in the universe is alive. But to take that a step further, one of the reasons why I think that everything is alive that vibrates is that I asked a very simple question. Where does the vibration come from? What causes something to vibrate? And I honestly believe that consciousness is what does it.
I agree.
Conscious awareness does it. That's where vibration comes from. That's why everything is conscious, everything is alive, everything is part of life. Well, if that's the case, then literally every time that we are choosing to focus on our vibration, we are literally focusing on our lives.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
Completely, totally focused on our lives. And we're doing so in a very pure way. We're not kind of tying it into, well, it's got to be this particular result or that particular result. It's just, this is me. This is my essential vibrational me.
Yes.
And when we focus on that, that's how you build that kind of confidence.
It is. But what you're, one of the prerequisite to what you're saying, by the way, I agree with, in theory, of everything you're saying.
So you're as crazy as I am. That's good. I love you for that. That's fabulous.
Yeah. I mean, we are mostly in alignment most of the time. You're very seldom wrong, Walt. You're very seldom wrong. But the
I
idea,
thought I was wrong, but I was wrong. But that's another topic.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. So, but before that, before you could really, as you're saying, everything is there, but learning the process. We're given this mechanism you just described with no instructions.
Yes.
So when you're around people, your early programming, when you're around people that are unintentionally negative around you, they're doubting, they're people that the world is against them, or we've always been poor, or whatever these narratives are, or my race is somehow this, or whatever your thing is, your economic background, your religion is a negative. If you're giving credence to that, that's built into your vibration.
Yes.
So everything that you're about, everything you ever learn, everything you believe is part of your vibration. So one of the reasons we were talking last week or the week before, how long does it take to change some of these things? And you're having to change all of that because it isn't just as I use the simple term, the subconscious mind, to make it more understandable. But
Mhm.
when you have to change everything, which then changes your vibration. So it's just it's something that when you have been vibrating at a certain level for a long time, it's hard to instant. We believe it's hard to instantly switch.
Yes.
I don't think it's hard, but I think we believe it's hard. So as long as that feedback's coming back, that vibration gets reloaded. And sometimes when things start going really well and we're like, okay, this is going good, then it's like, whoa, wait a minute. You remember the last time we got close and everything fell, and then the self-sabotage happens one more time.
I actually consider that tendency, that we'll call it limiting belief tendency that you were just describing. I consider that tendency to be proof positive, the best proof that we have of just how freaking powerful we are.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
I mean, the fact that we can hold ourselves in a, especially when it's a negative space, we're really good at holding ourselves in a vibrational space that we don't like, to the point where we convince ourselves we can't get out of it.
Yes.
My God, how much more powerful do you expect to be?
There's one of my favorite memes on the internet is that shows this horse or a donkey, I don't remember, tied to a plastic chair.
Mm.
And this is it's a horse. I remember now. I'm visualizing it. All the horse would have to do is just walk. And it's a plastic chair, like a little plastic pool chair. It would be nothing for the horse to walk with, but
Right.
The belief that it is tied to that chair keeps that horse from moving, and
Mm.
because he was tied to the pole, he was tied to this. There's I've used the flea example in several areas, but if you have a bunch of fleas in a jar and you put a bunch of fleas in a jar, they'll be jumping out of the jar. They'll go really high, and eventually all the fleas will get out.
Mm.
If you put the fleas in the jar, you tighten the lid. They jump and they keep hitting the lid.
Yeah.
Eventually, they quit hitting the lid. You take the lid off, the fleas will never jump out of the
They'll never
jar.
jump out. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They now believe, and that's they were talking about fleas, so they're that shows how microscopic this gets, and it's,
Yes.
the fleas now have their own limiting belief.
Which is astonishing because, first of all, it validates the craziness that you and I engage in, which says that fleas are alive and they're conscious.
Yeah.
That scares the pants off of a lot of people.
Yeah, so many people get stuck in the weeds on those kind of things. But
Yeah, right.
one of the things, my beloved bearded dragon Mango, who passed away unexpectedly a few weeks
Mm.
ago.
Yeah.
Mango's a reptile, and when she was alive, so Mango believed she was the most spoiled creature on the planet.
Mm.
And if Mango wanted to be picked up, she just stood by you, looked up, and it was automatically assumed you picked. So
Okay.
the one day a friend of mine was over, and he wasn't a big bearded dragon fan, so Mango walked over to him, and he's looking at it, and Mango's like, well, what you like, started bobbing her head like, this is your point where your job is to pick me up. It just, Mango was frustrated because it didn't work that time,
Yeah. Yeah.
and this is a reptile, and people that's ever owned a reptile, they don't think they have emotions or personality. My
Oh,
goodness,
please.
they really do. And so Mango walked over to me where she knew she would instantly be picked up
Yeah.
and caressed, and almost looked at him like, this is how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
So
Pay
when
attention. Here, you're going to get your first lesson on how to handle a reptile.
yeah. And so it's like when we took Mango to the doctor, Mango's never been made to, if Mango wanted to walk somewhere, so Mango was flabbergasted when the doctor wouldn't let her move while she was taking her temperature. It's like,
Ah.
what are you doing? Looking to me like this woman doesn't know the rules. It was so you even on the lower levels, you expect certain things, and when they appear over and over, where we get stuck as human beings, and life to me is fascinating. It's fun, and for the most part, I live every day just sort of in fascination of everything. I really do.
Mm.
People make me laugh. As you know, I have the most bizarre world surrounding me at all times, and I just find it fascinating.
I find it
And
fascinating, the world that you have around you too. I mean, it's not necessarily what I want to live, but I like watching it. It's like,
it's
oh my
hilarious
God, where's
sometimes.
this
Yeah.
whole world going to go next?
Yeah, you never know what's happening there. But I there's people that will say, you know, I hear this all the time. Why do you still work? Why do you do all this? Why do you still do all this? I love it. It's what I do. I have a definition of me. So I, I, I believe if I did two things, and I'm not being a negative predictor here, because this isn't going to happen. If I were to stop working and stop working out, I don't think I have long to live.
I don't think that's a big stretch, actually.
Yeah. However, I'm not planning on stopping, and I think I have an incredibly long time to live.
I think so too.
So because that's the path of that's my current programming. So the energy vibration is somewhere in the original topic. Did I hear the word intuition?
Mm-hmm.
So there's an intuition. So the intuition is a bedfellow that can be used properly. A lot of people think they have really good intuition, and there's a lot of people that think the intuition is always betraying them.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, they're both right.
Yeah.
If your intuition is something that you're tuned into and you really believe it, it's going to be very effective. If you're like, oh, I always pick the wrong person or always pick the wrong this or this, and my intuition is terrible. It is. It's all built in that same thing. The biggest factor in anything that we do as human beings is our belief system. When we believe it, it is what is the reality of it all. And that's what people have a hard time when I use I post in usually this directly. I do this often or some form of this, but your perspective dictates your reality.
Yes.
I post that at least once a week in some form or fashion.
Right.
And I believe that. And there are people that really want to push back on that.
Mm.
They want to say, no, my reality is not based on my perspective. My reality has been dictated to me.
Yeah.
Your reality has been dictated to you, and you believe it and you accept it. So as long as you're and they get very frustrated because it's almost like they want to defend their negative reality.
Yeah. Well, they do.
Yeah.
It's not that almost. They really do want to.
Yeah. And you see this all the time. And, I hear this in some form or fashion from somebody, random people like, I think I mentioned this last week. What you're doing is you're blaming the victim. You're not, you can't just get over trauma. You can't. And I by the way, I'm a big believer in treating your trauma, dealing with your trauma.
Yeah.
And I'm also a big believer in moving on from your trauma. A lot of traditional therapy today is not moving on from trauma.
This is true. Yeah. I remember the first time that I heard that phrase, you're blaming the victim, because it really caught me up short. Very first time. I never heard it before. So that's why it caught me up short. And I started thinking about, okay, so what does that phrase mean? What are they actually conveying to me? And very quickly, I realized that it was a trap.
Yes.
It was a trap within itself. It was a trap that was designed in such a way to effectively make you feel guilty no matter what.
Yes.
It was the have you stopped beating your wife syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're doing that like I left the law of attraction groups on Facebook a long time ago because they drive me crazy. As I mentioned, but one of the dialogues that I early on participated in was this lady that was, she was asking about the law of attraction. She said, I can't get rid of my trauma. I've been in therapy for 10 years, but my trauma still keeps me stuck and I'm debilitated by that. And somebody pointed out it's your belief in your trauma that is and she went crazy on us all. And she was like, well, you can't move on until the trauma is dealt with. And so I asked the question, I said, well, what point is moving on then? When do you know it's dealt with? And she goes, well, I guess you'll just figure that out when it's dealt with. I said, or what if it's dealt with today and you moved on? What would happen? It's just, and I said, so I don't want to harm anybody, and I'm not going to try to attack people's belief system, but the old Stoic concept, you're as harmed as you believe yourself to be harmed.
Yeah.
If you believe it, then yeah, it is, and it's going to perpetuate that forever. Or you can say, yeah, hey, we're here for. Yeah, we dealt with this. Let's move on. There needs to be a period behind the trauma instead of the belief that we just keep doing this over and over and over. And that's a lot of people get stuck there. Now, I'm not going to argue with them, and they can do I'm a big believer in let them do what they want to do. But when you want to argue back that, so, this person that molested you, when you were 3 is horrible. They've been dead for 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's horrible. I really hope you can deal with it and process all that. Are you going to do this? But are you going to be in this till you die?
One of the things that really surprises me, I don't know why it continues to surprise me, but it does, is I'm amazed by how many people who I see, particularly on the social media, who post stuff that largely demonstrates they really understand law of attraction, they largely understand vibration, they largely understand all of this, but they still have that victimhood side.
Yes.
And they're willing to fight for it under certain controlled circumstances. In fact, you'll remember back about 7 years ago, I published a book. It was a compendium of stories. You contributed a story about a young man who we called Marcus in the book, and it was a collection of stories from about 35 different people who were sharing. Here are examples of how I experienced the law of attraction playing out in my own life. One of the people who contributed a story fell into this category. She had a very strong belief in this concept of blaming the victim. And it got to the point where after, I never told you guys this, but after the book was published, she demanded that I unpublish the book and pull her story out because she didn't have anything to do with us if we weren't going to recognize that her limiting belief associated with defending, or not defending, but attacking the person for being a victim was removed. And I mean, I couldn't believe it, because this is a very advanced person in terms of understanding LOA.
Wow.
So even to this day, I kind of like scratch my head and say, wow, it really shows just how powerful our belief systems are. We can create mind spaces in ways that I would have thought were impossible, and yet we can actually not only create them, we can live in them.
Absolutely.
And we can stay with them.
You have that, and that, that's when you get into the concept of blame. One of the that we've done an entire podcast on that, on that one topic. And the blame is vibrational. When you're seeking blame, it doesn't matter if you identify the source of the problem to evaluate it. But when you're like, okay, well, this happened and this person happened, and I had a lot of stuff happen. I had a lot of craziness in my childhood. I had a lot of stuff and I could fall into either camp. I could have the excuse that I have ADHD. I was born in just severe mental illness and addiction. I was traumatized by in my childhood, seeing all the stuff going on around me. I developed a gambling addiction. I ended up in jail. I could play that narrative as I'm just hopeless and moved on. I'm stuck. That's a narrative I could play.
And you had lots of opportunity to play that narrative too.
Yeah, and all that stuff that I just said is true. But I rewrote the script. I rewrote it to, I was born into chaos to learn to deal with chaos. I was bred to do my job. I went to jail as the greatest lesson that I ever learned. It turned me around. When I got out of jail, I always say I'm not the richest man on the planet, but I don't think many people have made a bigger comeback than me. And, and I don't say that with arrogance, but
it's true.
I just chose a path where I could have gone either way. And not shockingly, I was being sarcastic, but my anxiety and depression, when my life got better and I quit worrying about all this stuff and lived today forward, that's all gone.
That last point too is one I want to bring out again. It ties back to my friend Ron, who I told the story about earlier. He had such a continuous experience of success in terms of having women just come up and give him names and phone numbers, that he had no doubt it was going to continue. Absolutely zero doubt, even though it was nowhere near the experience of 99.9% of the male population.
Right.
I mean, that shows, first of all, how powerful belief is, but it also shows how powerful repetition of the same experience is.
Well, yes, and when you realize to change your perspective and experience, you don't really change the experience, you change your perspective of the experience is what I'm trying to, it's reframing is a tool that's very effective in mental health, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. But
Sure.
reframe everything. There's one guy at the gym. I see these same people in the gym most of the time. It's always fun banter, and we tell jokes. And so this one guy comes in, and he is, he's like always like, well, how you doing? Well, my knee hurts, or what? There's always something.
Yeah.
And he goes, okay, go ahead and say it. I go, did you wake up today?
Go ahead and say it. He knows the routine.
Yeah. I said, yeah. He said, yeah. I said, are you walking? And he goes, yeah. I said, okay, well, I'm sorry you have a boo-boo. Let's move on. he laughs, but it's we get stuck on the little things that are wrong, when in reality, waking up today is not a privilege afforded everyone that I know. There's a lot of people that aren't afforded that privilege that I know. And so with that gift, if you view it as that gift, and there's a lot that's going to go on today. I have a lot that's not great in going on today, but I always reframe it with, did we make it? Did we get through the day? Did we do those things? Did we make progress? And if the answer is no, then we've got through the day. But if the answer we didn't make progress, hey, but we're still here, and we're going to take a shot at it again tomorrow. And it's just not worth living in that. And it's not being aloof or whatever. It's just simply, this is the way to live. I have people that have told me, you don't live in reality. I hear that a lot. And I go, my line, I always say, I don't live in your reality.
Yeah, I was just waiting for it.
Yeah. I said, but my reality is awesome. They go, are you familiar with what's going on in the world? I go, I'm really not, to be honest with you, but it's all good. It's all good for me. It just is in my behalf.
Yeah. I'm often amazed at how hard we will hang on to narratives we don't like.
Yes.
We will defend them to amazing degrees. And it raises a very important question in my mind, which is, well, isn't it true, therefore, that we value them higher? That we value these things we don't like higher?
Unintentionally, we do.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, it's when you in Abraham Hicks, one of the books, they talk about a perfect city. There's this perfect city where everything's fantastic and beautiful. But over on 7th Street, there's a pothole. And there's people that are going to focus on the pothole of the street and say, this place is a dump, it's in disrepair, or the rest are going to focus on the beautiful city itself and ignore the pothole. They're living in the same city, but they're going to defend that. And the idea that we keep repeating the same, and a lot of times people don't realize they're born into a family with a narrative, and a lot of people are stuck with that narrative. They believe they're stuck with that narrative for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And that's something that, in the belief system that exhibited that narrative it's just unbendable a lot of times. And, I had there's a family structure. I've worked with a lot of, families here in Richmond, and generally well-to-do families. And, they're good people, solid people that have been in the community forever. And so one of my clients, this has happened multiple times, but I'm thinking about one in particular. One of my clients, he finished college, and he started a business with his buddy that his parents didn't think that was wise. They wanted him to go straight and get his MBA. And so he was like, no, I want to do this. And they said, but at some point you got to get your MBA to be successful. And so finally we had a family meeting. He asked to have the meeting, and we're coming in. So the father was talking to me, and he goes, Joel, do you know anybody that's really successful that doesn't have an MBA? And I said, you picked the wrong question. I said, I know multiple billionaires, and none of them have MBAs. In fact, one of them doesn't have a high school diploma. So, the reality is, now, does an MBA guarantee a good, solid income? Possibly, probably. But you're you're taking your belief system because your grandfather got an MBA from the University of Virginia,
Mhm.
and so did your father. Now you did, and now your son has to. And you've all been successful, but you're not allowing for a different. You're demanding he repeat the same narrative. I said, why don't you let him? By the way, I reframed. I said, he's going to do what he wants to do, and we're way past you being able to tell him. So, but why don't you support the idea?
Mhm.
What if this is something that because I do know you love your son. He's a very smart young man. What if this thing blows up? Well, that's been a few years ago. It's blown up, and he's doing really well. They're really excited. He's way ahead of the curve. He didn't spend whatever NBA money is, a lot of money probably, and
Mhm.
he didn't have to spend all that money, and he has multiple businesses across multiple states now.
Which is very exciting. And
Yeah,
congratulations to him. That's well
yeah,
done.
great guy. And but in his family, they're not bad. They admit,
Sure.
hey, we changed the narrative. And his father jokingly said, I ran into them one time at dinner, and he said, yeah, none of my kids, because of you, none of my kids will ever get an MBA now. And I said, yeah,
It's all your fault.
yeah. I said, yeah. I said, you're welcome.
I love it. That is fabulous. Yeah. I also realized as you were telling the story, I'm sure you probably realized it on some level too. In a sense, he was fighting against your personal story
Yeah,
because you were brought up in a family that ran an insurance company, and the
yeah.
very last thing you wanted to do was to work for an insurance
Oh,
company. It was like that was instant death.
it literally was it did not end well at all, Walt. It
Not
did
at all.
not at
No.
all.
So, I just imagine to myself, I wonder how things would have changed. And I don't know what the answer is here. I mean, you might have some ideas. How would things have changed if your parents had had a different attitude about you coming to work for the company?
I've thought about that before,
Have you?
and I don't know. I
Mm,
don't know, but they later my mom, I tried to explain to them, and to be fair to them, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
mm,
So the insurance business it was what I call my ADD choice. I got a Porsche and I got a job.
right.
So, and I didn't realize how obnoxious that job would be for my ADHD.
Mm,
And my dad loved the business. So I don't know what it would have been. I'm almost glad that I didn't have, I am glad because the path, while certainly unusual and very times very
at
scary,
police, yeah.
yeah, I don't think I would have ever found this level that I have found now.
Yeah, that's a key point. And it's one we brought up many times. We go through these shit show situations in our life, and they end up being the best thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time that we talked about this on the show. This was many years ago. This is like 7, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And just being just blown away by the idea that experiencing all this negativity could be a good thing.
Yeah.
But it is.
Well, and part of that was, what helped as I reframed this, and I forget which one of the law of attraction guys was saying this, but it was when you go to the carnival fair, you want to ride the roller coaster. It's the fun. It's where the
Hmm.
excitement is. The merry-go-rounds for little kids. There's no excitement. Very predictable. So if you view your life as this is the journey it really you can't really do it wrong. You just got to
Mm,
go. And I did my best to do it wrong. I mean, you can't do it much more wrong than I did. Uh, but it couldn't end up any more right,
yeah.
if that makes any sense. Uh there's no way I would trade it, and it sounds so crazy, and people think I just say that because that's what I'm supposed to say. I look back and I go, no, I just, other than my son TJ passing, I'll make that caveat all the time.
Hmm.
But other than that, hell no. Let's just go. I'm glad I went through it. I'm so much stronger. I have different opinions. I don't have this. I was born into a very nice, good community, solid people, real Southern Baptist. I don't qualify as Southern Baptist anymore, as we were talking before the show.
Yeah.
But but nonetheless, it is this. It it really made me, it forced me out of that comfort zone. It forced me out of that enclave. There's people that are still in that town that never left. They're very happy. They've never seen another side of it. They think, that's fine. If that's their version of happiness, but I got to experience so much. I have so much experience in life. I I am so confident in me as a human being right now. After all I went through, I survived the unsurvivable, and here I am.
Yeah.
So there's no longer a fear of not making it. There's not a fear of financial problem. There's not a fear of health. It's just let's go. I have managed to overcome any obstacle. So that journey made me far stronger. I view that journey as a necessary part to become the man I am today. I I I, I don't have anxiety. I don't have depression. I don't have those things that haunted me in the middle of my addiction. I defeated my addiction. That 12-step people hate when I say that, but I cured my addiction. That's taboo. I just love
Oh
to
yeah,
say
you're not allowed to say
overdose.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but you get the
Um,
point. And so that was a necessary part of all that. And my perspective along the way, the more my perspective started seeing this as a journey versus a curse, I remember thinking, how cursed could one human being be?
mm,
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah. What a very reasonable question to ask yourself
Yeah,
considering what you went through. So yeah.
yeah.
And I don't know
Versus,
I'm sure we violated at least one, maybe more than one of the 12 steps. And so if we have, 12-step advocates, please forgive us.
yeah,
But
well, and 12 steps is a great program. It works for people, but I'm just talking about from my perspective. They have a set of rules that they literally tell you day one, you're powerless.
yeah, yeah,
Clearly, I'm not powerless. That's let's rule that part out.
that's getting back to the whole victim thing that we were talking about before. So yeah, I want to try to stay away from that one myself for the exact same reason.
Yeah,
I do want to get back to our original topic though and kind of tie it in because we've really been touching on it the whole time, but I want to show how we're touching on it. The original topic, the way Jen put it together, was the universe speaks through vibration. Are you aligned? What we've just been describing here are, in your particular case, all the different ways that you went through hell in order to get aligned. And
yes,
the story of my friend Ron was, we didn't really see how he got into alignment in the first place, but there was a man who, in regard to that one thing, being able to attract women into his life, he was in complete alignment, total alignment. And I say it that way for a reason. I want to point out that it's very rare for somebody to be in alignment about everything.
well,
But it's very common for people to find alignment in certain ways.
one of our calls years ago, you'll remember the call when I describe it.
Okay.
This guy, somehow we took a live call. I don't remember that, but we seemed like we
Yeah,
took a
we were
live call.
experimenting with that at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he said he was thankful. He's been listening to our show. He was very thankful that he learned to take because his health and financial well-being had greatly improved. He was
Hmm.
really impressed with that.
Hmm.
However, the reason he got into this was his relationship and looking for, and he could, that seemed to be no better.
Hmm.
And we quickly knew the answer because the other stuff, you were so focused, you're hyper focused on the lack of relationship, you kept that lack going, but you were using the law of attraction, the other two things sort of vicariously, and it just, you flourished in
Hmm.
those two areas. So the finding somebody that is in tune on all areas of the lineup, like Ron. One of the questions I was going to ask, if I don't know Ron obviously or his life, but likely most people that sort of are born into alignment in one area often find themselves way out of alignment in other areas.
Yes. In his particular case, from what I knew about him then, and I did actually do a little search to see if I could find him. I haven't contacted him, and I don't intend to contact him, but I wanted to find out, could I find him? And he's pretty much doing the same thing he was doing years ago. I did find him. And he's been very successful. So financially, he's done well. He obviously has this thing going on. As far as I can tell, his health has been good. But there's an interesting little thing that was true then and is true now for him where relationships are concerned. He was very good, excellent, better than anybody else that I ever met at attracting women. He was terrible at maintaining relationships.
That was going to be my next question. Yes, I have another version of Ron, and I'm not going to mention his name because it'll identify him to many people that
Sure.
I know. But this guy was part of my friend group, and from the description of most of my female friends, he was the least attractive of all of us. But
Okay.
we couldn't walk into a concert, a bar, anywhere without him having some girl making out with him. I won't get into more details than that, but he was, just he just was a magnet. We don't know.
Right.
He had a great sense of humor. He was funny. He also has been, I'm aware of 3 or 4 divorces. He was great at attracting, but he was not good at keeping them.
Yeah. Well, my friend Ron actually, this was actually one of the first clues I got about what was really happening with his psyche and with his thought process. Because I only knew him for about 2-3 years. I'm not sure exactly how long, but it was about 2 to 3 years. And I didn't feel like I knew him well. He was one of those people who kept his inner stuff completely private. He would never share anything. I was able to kind of over time discern little bits and pieces and kind of piece a certain psychological framework together. But I never got confirmation directly from him because he wouldn't talk about any of that stuff. So there was that part of it. But the other part of it was because of that, he never really was close to anybody. And he surprised me one day toward the end of our relationship. He surprised me by telling me that he was going to get married. And that was like the last thing I would have expected from him. I said, "Oh, well, congratulations." He said, "Would you be my best man?" I didn't feel like I was even close to the guy.
Well,
but it showed that he was so used to dealing with people where he wasn't close to anybody that from his perspective, I was the closest friend he had.
Well, and I can relate to that a lot of ways because I see a lot of that, with people where they're really good in one area, like because of what I do for a living, and I'm talking constantly. I'm always out there. I do public speaking. I do anything like that. I'm always out in there. But in reality, I have very few people that I'm really close to, and because I described it as having hundreds and hundreds of friends,
Right.
and probably 1 or 2 really close ones. It's just and I'm no means complaining. The ones I have are fantastic friends, trust them completely. But it's there's an assumption that Joel, thousands of people, and I do, but out of all those thousands, there's just a couple that are there, and you'll see that again. You'll see that a lot. It's almost like the balance of somebody who pisses me off is Tom Brady.
Really interesting.
Yeah. He's mega rich, famously talented, has the hottest wife, got another hot girlfriend. He's really attractive. Everything he touches turned to gold. It's like, we need a flaw here, Tom. Anything? Can you give us? Can you give us something, Tom? And by the way, I'm joking, and I admire the man. He believes his belief in himself is what made him famously wealthy and probably the greatest quarterback of all time. So, with that being said, it's like there's no flaws here. There's just, it's like Tom got all the deal. Tom got every bit of it,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Well, let me finish my story because I actually was going to go somewhere with where I was going. So he asked me to be best man. I said, "Oh, well, okay. Yeah." I mean, I was kind of surprised that he would pick me. And I realized later he wasn't really close to anybody. So it kind of made some sense. So they had the wedding. The wedding was the first time I met his bride. I'd never met her before that. And it was evident to me from the moment I walked into the place that the wedding was for show. There was not any real depth going on here. And I said, "Oh, well, this isn't going to last real long." And I didn't really know what to say. I mean, I was the best man. I had to give the toast, right? I didn't really know what to say. To this day, I can't even remember what I said. But what I said amounted to little more than, "Please raise your glass to the bride and groom," because I didn't know what else to say.
Yeah.
And so the wedding completed, and 6 months later, they were divorced. And I'm pretty sure that they broke up within like days after the wedding. I'm pretty sure it didn't last much longer than that, and that it was basically just trying to convince the courts of the state of New York to let them be divorced.
Yes.
That's what 5.5 months were for. And then shortly after that, he ended up moving to another city where he was going to get a good job, and that's the last I heard of him. But it was a fascinating experience because I got to see firsthand how somebody can be both in alignment and out of alignment in the same general topic, if you will,
Yes.
the same time. So later on, when I learned about law, now that was 30 years ago. I learned about law of attraction about 15 years ago. So it took a long time before I got there. But once I finally got to that point, that experience from 30 years ago finally made sense.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
I do.
I was able to make sense out of something that previously just seemed like an enigma, something that
Yes.
was unexplainable.
Yes.
And it all had to do with alignment.
Well, and that's the key, the alignment within, the alignment within the alignment almost.
Yeah.
There's very few people, and I don't know if I can say this. I can. Very few people get total alignment in everything. I don't know if
Mhm.
anybody gets total alignment. As I'm thinking about it, I'm just trying to
I
process
can't
like,
say I've met anybody. I mean, I've met some
yeah,
people who are really good, but
yeah.
wow.
Yeah, and so I totally get that. So it's a more difficult task than you realize. A lot of the I work with some young men with Asperger's that are considered savants. They're
Mm,
brilliant in one area. You
right.
know one kid can tell you about quantum physics, and he may be the only person I ever talked to that understood quantum physics. He tried to explain it to me, and he goes, Joel, it's so simple. And I'm going, I'm serious. I don't understand it. I don't. He's like,
Mm.
Joel, you're so smart. And I'm like, I don't I want to. But I mean, he's that. But yet, the most fundamental things, like he has run out of gas, literally run out of gas, probably 30 times. He's only
Wow.
17.
Okay.
Runs out of gas all the time. He goes, his dad's so frustrated. They just bought him an electric car, and they plugged it in. They plug it in for him because they're tired of running and filling up with gas. He just, but yet he can discuss. I mean, he gives talks on this stuff to some big name people. He's spoken
Mm,
to uh, I forget the name of the scientific whatever that big company is. I mean, as a kid, he's so knowledgeable on physics and quantum physics and the quantum. He has his own theory of the combining physics and quantum physics, how that works. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't.
And I think this is also pointing to something that is a great way to conclude our topic about alignment and being in vibrational alignment. It's that if you're not in alignment on everything, it's okay.
Well, that see,
It's not that big of a deal.
I know, and that's how I live. My law of attraction has advanced to it's just on cruise control. I don't
Mm.
want to know how it works. I don't care what happens. I just am shocked that it keeps working. I'm like, well, that's fantastic, and there's very little effort in anything outside of my job. You know what I mean? It's
Mm,
the stuff fills the blanks. It takes care of itself.
right.
And you get to that point. I don't think I'm in alignment in all areas. And I don't care if I'm not in alignment with all areas. If I
Yeah.
need to work on that, I will. I am historically really bad with the relationships. I really am. I mean, I'm terrible, and I own that. And my belief that I'm terrible reinforces the fact that I am actually terrible.
Oh,
So
sure. Yeah. I mean,
there
that
is
goes
that.
hand in
So
hand. Yeah.
and I don't care. So there's
And that's
that.
the point right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
It's not that important. It's
It's
not
not
that
that big of a
important.
deal to me. So it doesn't mean I don't still enjoy attractive women and going out and stuff like that, but I can mess it up pretty quickly, and I'm like, I don't get it, but it doesn't matter. The rest
And
of
and I
stuff,
always say it's good to have a skill. That's a good one. Yeah.
yeah, it is just. But again, the idea that the individual person, the bio individuality of all of us,
Mm,
is you got to work on what matters to you, not what your
yeah.
parents think, not what your
Yes.
family has always done. Figure out your stuff, and then learn to vibrate in that field, and just let it happen. It's so amazing when you get to that place, and it there's nothing. If I know if I set my mind to do anything, and I want to do it, that's the key, because I don't want to do a lot of things, but if I want to set my mind to it and actually do it, it's done. It's already done. It's just perceived as being done.
People often talk about having a purpose in life. And
Yes.
for many people, it's a God-given purpose. It's not one that they give to themselves. Personally, I quibble with them, but that's okay. They want to see it that way, they can. To me, that is the purpose, what you just laid
Yes.
out. Choosing what it is that is important to you, pursuing it, and becoming in alignment with it.
Yes.
That is everyone's purpose. Now, how does that play out in different lives? It's going to be different every time.
There's a
But
different story. Yes.
yeah.
The point of life to me, and this is just my interpretation is you can almost interchange the word purpose and journey here. The
Mm.
having a reason to wake up. I like to go get on the boat every morning and go down my journey. I do.
Mhm.
And Lord knows there's going to be some U-turns. We're gonna end up in some canal somewhere. There's some crazy stuff going on. I have to call a tugboat. All those things are going to happen on my journey. You know that. But I no longer am ever, I don't focus on any destination whatsoever. It's just, I
Mhm.
just love the journey, and you can live that way. And to me, it's the most fulfilling way to live. I don't, sometime between now and the next probably 50 years, I'm going to be dead somewhere in that wide, in the meantime, my only job is to get up every day, work with the people I work with, enjoy my journey, and repeat it as many times as I'm allowed to repeat it. That's it. Life's amazingly simple that way.
Well, Joel, keep repeating it. Keep following that journey because I love hearing about it, and we all love hearing about it. And thank you for sharing it because it's so much fun. Plus, we get to follow our own journeys. We get to follow multiple journeys.
Yeah, exactly. I love, and my second favorite hobby is watching other people's journey. They're
Yeah,
fascinating to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's what keeps me doing this podcast. That's why I've been doing it as long as I have, and I probably
Yes.
will for as long as I'm breathing, just because it's so much fun to watch other people's journeys.
It's fantastic. Thank you, buddy. Thanks to our audience.
Thank you, everybody out there. We'll see you next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.